بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه. The whole world now has heard of this small force in Medina that is growing every day. Those who were persecuted now have a home. They have a nation. They have an army that could inflict defeat upon the fierce Quraysh army. Everyone in Arabia was talking. And this did not go very well down the throat of Quraysh. They've lost a great amount of their dignitaries. Abu Jahl, Utbah, and Shaybah ibn Rabi'ah, Al-Walid ibn Utbah, Umayy ibn Khalaf, Ubay ibn Khalaf, Uqbah ibn Abi Ma'it, Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, all these great names down the drain. So this did not sit well with them. And this is why a year later, when Safwan, the son of Umayy ibn Khalaf, who was killed there, and Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, who was also killed in Badr, they went to Abu Sufyan, who became now the leader of Quraysh. And they asked him to give them financing from the caravan that was saved in Badr, so that they would make and deploy an army to attack Medina. So Abu Sufyan agreed, and they started through this year sending to tribes, asking for men to enlist, and they gathered 3,000 warriors, and they marched towards Medina. When they were close by to Medina, the Prophet ﷺ received the news of their coming. So he consulted his companions. As usual, the Prophet always consults his companions. The elders and the people of wisdom advised him to remain in Medina, because it was a natural fortress surrounded by mountains, and no one ever tried to invade Medina and succeeded because of its difficult terrain for an army to march and attack. And they said that we can have street fights and fight them from top of our homes and houses, and women can throw things over them and they can be easily defeated. The youngsters of the youth who missed the opportunity to go out with the Prophet ﷺ last year during the Battle of Badr said, no, we would like to march like we did, or like our brethren did last year, and meet them outside. Who knows, maybe we would win the privilege of martyrdom. And they started arguing. And the Prophet ﷺ went to his chamber while they were arguing. Then, after calming down, the youngsters said, I think that the Prophet ﷺ was obviously inclined to the opinion that we should stay in Medina and fight. So we will tell him that we will fight in Medina, as he wished. When he came out, he was already in his armor, wearing his helmet. And they said, "O Prophet of Allah, we've agreed to fight in Medina as you had instructed and wished in the beginning." And the Prophet said to them, alayhi salatu wasalam, that was too late. And it is not befitting for a messenger when he wears his armor to stay behind. It's done. So the Prophet ﷺ went with his companions to meet the polytheists. They managed to gather 1,000 men, which was not a small army. Unfortunately, when they set off, 1/3 of the army retreated. This was led by Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, the hypocrite, the head of the hypocrite. He retreated with 1/3 of the army, 300 men of his own people. And he said, "We do not know why we should kill ourselves. You went against our advice." So they went back to Medina, leaving the Prophet ﷺ with only less than 700 men. So the plan was, again, a magnificent, perfect military plan. They camped near Mount Uhud. The Prophet ﷺ placed 50 archers on top of the mountain, and he gave them a clear directive not to move from their positions, whether they win or lose. The Prophet reiterated this a number of times. Even if you see us being snatched by birds from the sky, don't leave your positions. And if you see them running away from us, don't leave your positions until I tell you to do so. And he appointed upon them Abdullah ibn Jubayr, may Allah be pleased with him. So the battle started. And these 3,000 men, in few minutes, started to run away and could not face the fierce fighting of the Muslims. And it seemed that everything is going according to plan. The Muslims are winning, the disbelievers are running away, so many casualties among them, so many injured, leaving behind them booties of war. This is when the error took place. When the archer saw this happening, they said, "We should come down from the mountain, leave our positions, and collect the booties of war." And their leader, Abdullah, was telling them, "Do not do this. My people, remember the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ." But they would not listen. So they went down while Abdullah was there with 1 or 2 men, which made an opening for the disbelievers to come and attack the Muslims from behind. This is what Khalid ibn al-Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, who was with a group on horseback, noticed. So they went around and came from behind, took the position of the archers, killed those remaining, and started to hit and strike the Muslims. The error of a small group of Muslims caused the almost defeat of the entire army of strong believers with the Prophet ﷺ leading them. And it was chaos, a lot of confusion. The Muslims started attacking one another. They did not know who to attack. Their lines were disturbed, and there was simply chaos. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, may Allah be pleased with him, said that the Muslims amidst this chaos killed my own father, al-Yaman. And I was telling them, my Muslim brothers, this is my father. But they could not recognize who's the enemy and who's the friend. And the Prophet ﷺ was physically attacked. His tooth was broken. His cheeks were wounding. And a ring of his armor was stuck in his skull and he was bleeding. And the disbelievers thought that they were winning until Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet's uncle, was killed. Mus'ab ibn Umair, the flag bearer, was killed among 70 martyrs of the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ managed to call 30 of his men to come around him, and they initiated to fight back. 30. And he called among the Muslims to regroup and reorganize. And they marched against the army once again to successfully defeat the army that they thought they were about to annihilate the Muslims. Abu Sufyan thought that it was best to retreat and run because this second wind was not anticipated. So they took their camels and fled back to Quraysh, and the Muslims started to treat their wounded, to bury their martyrs, going back to Medina to heal from their wounds after they were almost going to be defeated, but Allah grant them victory, to reflect upon the lessons to be learned. How a small group of Muslims can negatively impact the whole ummah, which tells us and teaches us that our unity is very important, that selecting who to be with us is very important, because if you don't filter those who come, they could negatively manage to harm you and harm your cause, as did the archers whom Allah has forgiven and pardoned with His mercy. هذا والله أعلم ونسبة العلم إليه أسلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد.